All right, welcome everyone. If you are here, you are in the right place for the Adverse Childhood Relationship Experiences Town Hall, the connection between childhood trauma and chronic illness, and recognizing the relationship between adversity, chronic disease, and nutritional health. As I mentioned, if you're just joining in, just signing in right now, you're welcome to share your location in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from today, and we will get started here with a land acknowledgement. So operating out of the greater Seattle area, we want to acknowledge that our work does exist on the land that originally belonged to the Coast Salish people, specifically the Puyallup tribe. In this, I would like to recognize that these tribes stewarded this land throughout the generations and continue to do so today. In their Aboriginal language, the Puyallup tribe's name meant generous and welcoming behavior to all people, friends and strangers who enter our lands. This acknowledgement is only a small step in my commitment to advocating for the return of these lands to Indigenous peoples. And also on this slide, you'll notice there is information where you can find what land you are on in whatever location you are for what native land and Indigenous land is there. The League of Extraordinary People's mission and vision, we want to share that with you today. Our mission is really to launch an educational and spiritual enrichment revolution to build hope, resilience, and healing through community empowerment. And our vision is to establish a transformational, integrative, and replicable self-healing center of extraordinary people. This residential community model will heal transgenerational trauma through a foundation of safety, trustworthiness, and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment of voice and choice, and purposefully elevating historical, ethnic, and cultural legacies. We really want to ensure that all of our work is grounded in the principles of trauma-informed care. So what you see here listed in our vision is reflective of those guiding principles of trauma-informed care. And our founder and owner of the League of Extraordinary People, Alfred White, is going to be leading our presentation today. This is so you have some background information about him. After nearly 38 years of experiencing homelessness, Alfred swallowed a 1/4 ounce of crack cocaine in 2004, only 9 days after being released from prison, and nearly died. He awoke paralyzed, and that is when he made the decision to seek help for his history of addiction. Alfred has since received his master's degree in Christian ministry with an emphasis in Christian counseling and has dedicated his life to helping others heal. Alfred's past childhood experiences now manifest in his body as several chronic health conditions, including liver cancer, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and irritable bowel syndrome. He is a subject matter expert and a licensed mental health psychotherapist. So as you can see, these are 2 images of Alfred here, and in the left image, he has his dog Bella with him, and so just showing the contrast of how his life has transformed over these years. So to kind of center us in what our topics today will be, we will first be diving into 5 facts about health that are often misunderstood, and that's going to be brought to us from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University. And then we'll be going into an exploration of adverse childhood relationship experiences, and that's specifically out of the work of Dr. Veronique Mead. And then we'll also be closing with some information about what you can do if you are experiencing some of the things that we're talking about today, and how you can use somatic experiencing as well as trauma-informed nutrition to really be advocating for your health with whatever medical providers that you're working with, as well as just in your personal life in general with family members and friends. So with all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alfred to open us with this quote here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alfred White with the League of Extraordinary People, and I'm a licensed mental health clinician and a substance use disorder professional, and also a lived experience. So I want to settle the room this morning by grounding us in this affirmation. And it says that compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity, the places that scare you. And actually, that's how we got to this subject matter today, is that in 2018, in August of 2018, my doctor diagnosed me with liver cancer and told me that I would need a liver transplant. And in 2017, I had been I had found some research on adverse childhood experiences, the fact sheets, and through the fact sheets, it explained to me the impact of adverse childhood experiences. And this information came from Veronique Mead. And I had been going around actually using that model to try to gain support in the community so that we can start building a different type of housing, healing center in Seattle. And come to find out, I would need that same information to save my life. Veronique Mead's work on her own health inspired me to do the same work on myself after I had 2 Y90 liver procedures where they inserted radiation into my liver. And I asked my doctor afterwards, I said, well, what's the continuum of care program for that? And he didn't have an answer for me. So since I had already created a continuum of care program for a hospital locally in Seattle, I went on and continued to do my research to learn how I could heal myself, because that's what Veronique did. Veronique was a medical doctor, and she went to school to learn about somatic expansion, because what I found out was that my body holds the score. And I found that my adverse babyhood experiences and the environment, my adverse childhood experiences and the environment has compromised my neurobiology. And so as we move forward in this material, I want you to really understand that it hadn't it been for the work of Veronique Mead and her illness with chronic fatigue syndrome, that like I have, along with fibromyalgia, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, because she made me learn the urgency of the need for the BIPOC community to get to really understand what's the undergirding of our so-called mental health problems or behavioral health challenges in the community. And it has more to do with adverse childhood experiences and the 3 realms of ACEs. It's our environment, our community, and also our household, and the nutrition that we did. So today, as we move forward in the next slide, we'll open up and bring this to you. And this picture of this young baby here, we're going to be focusing on the 5 facts about health that are often misunderstood. And because I grew up in Holly Park in Seattle, Washington, I grew up into an adverse babyhood experience that actually violated my physiology. And as we get to know more and learn more about this, and actually, you guys, I really want to calm this down and break the ice. This is a class. This is a class. I'm speaking from the heart here. So I struggle each and every morning. Some of you guys might have chronic illnesses, and you know that it depends on the weather, how you feel. And so I still have problems with sleep. And so as we move through this, I want you to really understand what it means to be a parent out here in this world, and what the world's domestication and the dream of the planet is like in reference to childcare and raising our children, because we are actually the ancestors of our ancestors, and we need to walk accordingly. And the only way we're going to be able to walk accordingly is by providing the information to you without charge. And so today I want to give you some information that you can use. And so it says, did you know that interactions among genes, experiences, age, and environments influence every biological system in the body with especially powerful effects in the earliest years? When we think about the foundation of early childhood development, we often focus on brain architecture. However, the environments we create and experiences we provide for young children and their families affect not just the developing brain, but also the other physiological symptoms. Systems related to brain development, heart and lung function, digestion, energy production, fighting infection, and physical growth are all interconnected and influences each other's development and function. And below, learn other 5 facts about health that are frequently misunderstood. And this is the thing, you guys, we keep, with Western civilization, we want to send everybody to treatment. I think it's most important that we give everybody the information first for free before we start charging them to learn how to live. So the first of the 5 facts is the experience we have earlier in life are at least as important for the biological foundations of physical and mental health as lifestyle choices we make as adults. Wow, I didn't know that. So it says that without dismissing the influence of adult lifestyle, including nutrition, exercise, and sleep on physical health. Early adversity can increase the risk for many of the most common chronic diseases that appear later in life. Listen, later in life, critical or sensitive peers provide unmatched opportunities for both positive and negative influences on developing the biological systems. Increasing evidence is pointing to the importance of the prenatal period and the first few years after birth for the development of the core immune functions. Imagine that, metabolic regulation, and other physiological systems that can affect long-term well-being. Now that's something that a lot of us never even heard of. And the next, number 2, is that poor health outcomes are not inevitable after experiencing adversity early in life, but they are more likely if we do not adequately support children and families experiencing persistent hardships or challenges. But what happens early, prenatally in the first couple of years, makes us more likely to develop the future physical and mental health problems. Let me reiterate this. What happens early, prenatally, in the first couple of years makes us more likely or less likely to develop future physical and mental health problems. While it's always better to have health-promoting experiences as early as possible, it's never too late to make things better. So that's the reason why I opt for we need to have more information, more education for our parents and for our young children. There are many opportunities to build resilience, only if you know, but beginning in early childhood and continuing through life by providing for supportive relationships in predictable environments. So we can fly people to the moon. How come we can't have more supportive relationships in predictable environments? So reducing sources of significant stress and building a toolkit of adaptive skills. If we can send people to the moon, how come we can't stop homelessness? The more we build up protection and support for the environments in which people grow up, the smaller the likelihood of future health problems. It sounds like to me, this is the setup. This is the underlay for the overplay, because if you don't get this kind of information from your parents so they can learn how to protect you, how are they going to attune to you? How are they going to help you with your nature when it comes time to nurturing you? Number 3, when the developing brain and biological systems adapt to what they experience in their environment, it may be positive in the short term, but negative in the long term. If the brain perceives excessive, frequent, or persistent threat, listen to me, it learns to expect adversity and develops a shorter fuse. So that's the reason why we see some people that blow up all the time. This is it. It's not that they have an anger problem. It's actually a problem with their physiology. And so for activating physiological responses throughout the body, so not only do they have a short fuse, but they also too, they go into fight or flight, into their sympathetic nervous system. This kind of adaptation has both benefits and causes. It may protect health in acute and short-term situations, but by preparing the individual to respond quickly to threats, that's what it's like for being out there on the streets. But it can have a significant wear and tear effect that damages long-term health if activated too high a level for too long. So subsequently, it turns into inflammation. An important part of the immune system is an example of response to challenges that is necessary and beneficial in the short term, but harmful in the extreme. So I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but I spent 38 years out there on those streets. And so I left home when I was 13 years old, because at the age of 5, I seen my mom get knocked out by my soon-to-be stepfather with a Thunderbird bottle, and that impacted my life. I guess it never got turned off. My amygdala got set so high that in actuality, it compromised my whole neurophysiology. And then at 13, I couldn't take what I was experiencing at home, and so I left. So I'm just trying to tell you guys that after living out on the streets, being homeless for so many years, I came to understand that the fibromyalgia and the liver cancer I came is the direct response of the environment that I was living in. Number 4, the body stress response is the same, no matter what causes it, but a pileup of stresses over time means there's less time for recovery. So the duration, severity, or meaning the dose response and timing of the experience, along with the availability of a supportive relationships, are what determine whether the body's stress response is ultimately harmful or growth promoting. A lot of us don't really understand that actually it's our stress response that's more in control of our thinking than our thinking is control of our stress response. This is why chronic and severe sources of stress, such as deep poverty, I'm going to really say this again. This is why chronic and severe sources of stress, such as deep poverty, systemic racism, and community violence, which are often experienced together and may be perpetuated by structural barriers to affect, prevent, or mitigation, can be also damaging to health across the lifespan. And so if you look at this, you guys, like I look at this, and I'm looking at this and it talks about across the lifetime, think of how many times that you've been to the doctor, had you to known or had your parents had to known how to take care of us as children so they can raise us. Because a lot of us was just born in America. We never had a chance to be raised because we still hadn't got over the epigenetics of the prior generation of the BIPOC community of our parents who flew through the facts in fact number 5 here about all policies and delivery systems serving young children and families across sections can support both early learning and the foundations of lifelong health. No, listen, you guys, all policies and delivery systems serving young children and families across sectors can support both early learning and the foundations of lifelong health. But that doesn't work good in a Western civilization. That model and those type of policies you'll see in Eastern civilizations, Eastern cultures, because Eastern cultures care more about the people and their ancestry than Western culture, because Western culture was built upon capitalism. And they say the effects of significant adversity on brain development. And so this is something that your parents should have known prior to them even conceiving a child. The effects of significant adversity on brain development while the child is in your mother's womb. Let's just picture that. And therefore, early learning, social and emotional development, and kindergarten readiness are well documented. This knowledge has influenced early childhood policy objectives, program design, and allocation of resources for decades. But the frontiers of science now point to the need for an expanded mindset that views investment in early years as a necessary priority for strengthening the foundation of both health and learning by addressing the common origins and disparities in each. The good news is that the very things all children need to improve school readiness, responsive relationships, core adaptive skills, reduce sources of stress, and appropriate nutrition are the same as those that are needed to support and improve lifelong health. So how come our schools are not teaching us? Is this education or is this just some information that's being used against us so that we can become the fodder for the healthcare system? If you look at the healthcare system in the BIPOC communities and you look at what's undergirding it, you see healthcare, educational, personal finance, and criminal justice. And all these organizations are run by nonprofits, and they're usually run by white nonprofits that actually have created curriculum based off white body supremacy culture that is impacting all of our BIPOC communities on a healthcare level through just plain old information. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about something I really, really experienced, and it's really impacted my life, and it was the adverse childhood relationship experiences. And it's the most underestimated risk factor for chronic illness, PTSD, complex PTSD, and other chronic systems. Not only do I have a chronic illness, you guys, but I have PTSD, because I spent 38 years out there on the streets. I can tell you right now today that I've been stabbed, I've been pistol whipped and robbed. I got 2 holes in my head. I got one in the front and another one back here with the hair covering it. And people ask me about the one in the front, and I would tell them I was in a car accident. My mouth is twisted because I've had my jaw broke about 4 or 5 times. I've had my nose broke about that same many times. I've been beaten up and beaten by gang members. I've been hit in the head with hammers and 2x4s, you know. So I am resilient. And then plus I use drugs and alcohol. And I didn't use drugs and alcohol necessarily to get high, but I used them to self-medicate my physiology. It wasn't a conscious decision to use, but what it was the calling for help. And so we don't look at people like that, but we didn't realize what was going on. See, we've experienced the domestication and the dream of the planet, but not the proliferation of the cultures of the BIPOC community. So as we move to the next slide, I'd like to share with you guys what we're going to talk about today. And that's that children are designed to learn safety from parents, but I really didn't have a parent. I had a mom, but I had a dad. But they wasn't a family. And so subsequently, during my upbringing, during the nurturing that was needed for the nature that I was presented in the form that came out of my mother's womb, I had some secure attachment problems. I had some insecure attachment problems. And then we're going to be talking about adverse childhood relationship experiences and chronic illness, emotional and psychological health, physical health consequences of insecure attachment. Did you hear this? They even knew back then that the physical health consequences of insecure attachment. The absence of nurturing has a larger impact than the presence of the ACEs, than anti-ACEs, counter-ACEs, increased resilience. If we're not creating self-healing, resilient communities, you guys, we're not working in the best interest of our communities. And then we'll talk about the 30-year perspective, multi-generational influences. I don't know if anybody is interested in this material that we're talking about today, but I think it is very, very important that you actually join up with the League of Extraordinary People and take a look at secure attachment. Children are designed to attach to their parents, who are themselves also designed to nurture their little ones and to help them feel safe and loved. A child's experience of secure attachment creates a sense of belonging and connection, a sense that all is right in the world. And when we in our nervous systems and immune system and other organs feel safe and protected, we learn that we can reach for what we want in the world. We learn that our needs are important and will get met. We develop a deep sense that the world is a safe enough place and that we can defend ourselves or ask for and get help when we need it. We learn that we are special and have something to contribute. We grow deep, as a sense deep at our core that we are worthy and lovable. We bring these core beliefs to other relationships later in our lives. And this is something I'm learning now today as I heal. And I'm only learning this through Veronique Mead's leading. If it wasn't for Veronique's research and her approach on this, I wouldn't have never learned it, because it would have been caught up into the medical journals. It would have been someplace that it wouldn't have been accessible to us who from the BIPOC community, who don't have appropriate healthcare, who don't have appropriate healthcare providers, and who don't have appropriate culturally competent healthcare providers. Because in the BIPOC community, if you don't understand our journey, you'll never understand our health. And if you don't understand where we're from and we don't know where we're from, we won't even know the nutrition that's needed. It goes on to say secure attachment is that a person who has positive expectations of both self and others is secure. Secure attachment is associated with an internalized, learned sense of being worthy of care, of being effective in eliciting care when required, and a sense of personal efficacy in dealing with most stressors independently. Secure individuals are described as adaptable, capable, trusting, and understanding. Secure attachment happens when there's enough awareness and support in the family, when parents have enough support themselves to be nurturing and to see and treat their children as deeply intelligent and prescient beings that they actually are, not the beatings and whippings that we got. We're from Africa. We're from a place that they took us so fast, they didn't even take our culture, our legacy, or nothing. So that should tell you something about the white body culture when you're looking at policies and how they use the words and policies to control and impact our healthcare. We are all the same people. Start looking at yourselves as just an organism, and we have different colors, and the colors mean something. Investigate and research melatonin. So as we move on here, I'm going to talk to you now about insecure attachment. Insecure attachment is characterized by only sometimes type of caregiving in which babies learn that the world and their ability to have an impact on it is basically inconsistent. Sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes all their needs are met, and sometimes only some of them are. Infants learn that others are not dependable or consistent. They often also do not learn or understand emotions, their own or others. And all this work comes from Veronique Mead, you guys. I wanted to explain to you, this is her personal research and from her lived experience. And so these are the things that we need to understand. It says that as has been identified in the Adverse Childhood Experiences ACEs research first conducted by Fellaini and Dr. Anda in 1998. Yes, this information has been around since 1998 on a post on ACEs using the example of the Mason from the movie Boyhood. Insecure attachment is common. The fact that it is common, however, does not make it normal. The fact that ACRES and insecure attachment is common does not mean it has not effects. Insecure attachment reflects the impact of parents' own subtle, unrecognized experiences of traumas and relations they have had with their own parents. So that's how that stuff gets transferred down to us from generations to generations, because actually our parents' parents are parenting us. And so we don't get the necessary software updates that we need to have as organisms of life, as human beings, so that we can teach, lead, and guide our young ones to a better lifestyle and also to create better environments. When you look at the infographic, the 3 realms of ACEs, and you talk about the community, the household, and the external environment, and you look at all the products and all the toxins, we're not even looking at some of the things that's impacting our physiology that ends up impacting our psychology. And so it says things that happen to us can make it difficult for us to attune to our children and to their needs for connection and protection. A lot of us don't even understand the impact of what the media is doing on us and the news is doing to us. And then the politicians, and then all these policies, especially when you're from the BIPOC community. Not only are you dealing with the external turmoil and emotions in your household, but you go out to the community. If you're on the bus, if you're on your job, if you're at a store, if you're buying something, always something inappropriate is going to show up. And so if you don't have that secure attachment and you got insecure attachment, then you're going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because guess what's in charge? It's your nervous system. It's not your prefrontal cortex. It's your amygdala. It's your amygdala, your hippocampus, your cingulate, your insula, and your prefrontal cortex. Those are the 5 key points of the brain, the connectivity. And if you don't have the appropriate connectivity, or don't even know that you need to have these things connected, right? Then you're going to have a default. And the default is going to come up, keep showing up in your nervous system. Your nervous system is your homeland protection. It's your homeland security. So that's some more stuff. But let me continue on here. They say things that happen to us make it difficult for us to attune to our children. And attune means to teach our children to their needs for connection and protection. Parents don't choose to misattune or suddenly fail to nurture their kids. As a society, we have yet to recognize how life experiences can profoundly interfere with our built-in longings and desires to do so. They're using a bad program on us, you guys. That's a bad software update. It might have worked in the 1930s or the 1940s or the 1950s, but we're in 2021. The earth is moving on the axis, moving at 68,000 miles an hour. How are you moving in your life? Are you humble? What's your attitude like? What's your character like? What's your principles? What's your values? And so what I'm trying to tell you guys is that we're capable of learning about our anatomy so we can learn how to control our nervous system so our nervous system doesn't control us. They said that for those with chronic illness, it can make all the difference to know that it's not our fault and that there are ways of healing. And so when I found out after the liver cancer that I had chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and IBS, and then along with leaky gut, and I kept wondering what was wrong with me, and I kept praying. I used the book of Psalms, and I was on my knees praying. I didn't know how to get some help. But through my faith and my spiritual relationship with God, and some people don't have a relationship with God, well, maybe you might have to get a start with a good, orderly, directed relationship. And so that's all I'm doing. And I'm just following all the things that tell me that I need to research and stuff, because there's a voice inside of us that we don't even know about that can be very impactful when it comes down to healing. And so it says that for those with chronic illnesses can make all the difference to know that it's not our fault. That means that we have to forgive ourselves and that there are ways of healing. And that encouraged me to be curious and do the research. It can make all the difference to know about the science so we don't have to wait for medical professionals and other healthcare providers to learn about the research. And that's what I did. That's what Veronique did. She inspired me to learn about the research so I can heal myself. And so it goes on to say that adults with subtly dismissive parenting styles may love and care for their children, but respond to fear and grief and excitement or self-expression by avoidance and silence, by giving advice, by denying, by attacking, by minimizing, invalidating feelings. These styles of parenting are often perceived as benevolent, especially when compared to overt abuse. But these characteristics of parenting have an impact on children's developing senses of self, as well as physical and emotional health. But we don't know none of that because our parents didn't know any of that. So they couldn't even tell us any of this so we can live into 2021. They were so stressed out by just like what parents are stressed out about today, the pandemic. Our economy and its three realms of races are attacking the individuals and families in America until we start realizing that we need to create better education and better healthcare programs. And we need to empower the people. We can't keep sending people to treatment. We need to start creating healing centers. We can't get penalized for not knowing what our parents didn't know. But it says these characteristics of parenting have an impact on the child's developing sense of self as well as physical and emotional health. So lack of support for the expression and resolution of emotions connection is a significant factor in ACEs. They're only invisible ACEs. So we're going to talk about now is ACEs and chronic illness, emotional and psychological health. When parents are less available and nurturing, children develop nervous systems that are more likely, children develop nervous systems that are more likely to stress and less able to feel safe and trusted in the world. This is a way in which our cells, physiologies, and physical bodies develop subtle or overt perceptions of threat. This is huge here, you guys. The perceptions of threat are very huge. When you have a chronic illness, it is helpful to consider the perspective that symptoms are often a body's particular way of responding to the perception of threat. So that's what perception of threat is, you guys. The perception of threat is usually not conscious. It can be so subtle that you don't recognize it, even though your body does. And it can be as simple as not feeling safe. Some of the perception of threats can come from childhood traumas, such as adverse childhood experiences, work stress, strain in relationships or finances, having a difficult surgery, a history of complicated birth, a sense of not feeling safe, trauma in your grandparents or your parents or your other ancestors. Did you hear me? Or your other ancestors' life. An infection, which is a common trigger for onset of chronic illness. So when you get a chronic illness, a lot of times, you guys, the doctor doesn't even really realize that you have the chronic illness because that's not his specialty. So emotional and psychological health, when parents are less nurturing or less available and nurturing Children develop nervous systems that are more sensitive to stress and less able to feel safe and trusted in the world. So with all the electronic devices, with all the laptops, with all the cell phones, guess who's really hurting in today's world? The children. And so one of our quotes for the League of Extraordinary People comes out of the book by Dr. Joy DeGruy, The Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and how are the children? This is the Messiah Wars. I always ask them, how are the children? When you look around the world today and you look and you say, and how are the children? You can tell that we need to do a better job on educating our communities. And so because our nervous system is a way in which our cells, physiologies, and physical bodies develop subtle or overt perceptions of stress, when we long thought that individuals who develop PTSD had done so because of a single event that happened before the symptoms, the car accident, the war, the abuse, or other events, a professor of psychiatry and neuroscientist at Mount Sinai and one of the most renowned researchers in the field of trauma, Yetta, and others have found that individuals who develop PTSD have also had adverse events in childhood. In addition, a great history of adversity is associated with greater severity and in younger age at onset. The same is seen with chronic illnesses of all kinds. Kids with insecure attachment also develop learned release. And these beliefs, such as a sense that who they are is not important or acceptable. They may learn to be silent and to ignore their feelings or have a trouble recognizing what they believe and feel and want, unless it involves feeling their parents can tolerate. They may also feel profoundly alone and isolated in a world. That paragraph there, you guys, should really get you guys to understand that how kids feel, and you need to look back at how you felt, and also to be able to understand children with insecure attachments sometimes express their distress by acting out, tuning out, or by becoming defiant. Sometimes they become the good kid who excels in school, plays by the rules, acts happy, and learns to be a people pleaser, all regardless of the cost to themselves. While these coping strategies can enable children to survive their childhoods and even excel, there are also costs, and the costs includes physical health as well as emotional health. Physical health consequences of insecure attachment is recurrent ear infections, asthma, cystic fibrosis, epilepsy, failure to thrive, congenital heart disease. A lot of these things, you guys, especially in the BIPOC community of color, we're experiencing chronic healthcare illnesses, and we don't even know why. And here's one reason why: because the people in medical school, they don't even teach ACEs in the medical school. So subsequently, the doctors that you come out and you go see today, and you ask them, are they familiar with the ACE study, or do they have a trauma-informed care approach? And they have neither. So they don't even have your best interest at heart, because they're not going to go and update their software because nobody told them to. They don't measure the Black community like we measure the Black and Indigenous community of color. They also describe that ACE studies provide further strong evidence that insecure attachment is a risk factor for chronic physical illnesses. So in other words, if you experience ACEs such as physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, witnessing violence in your household, have a parent with a mental illness or who abuses substances such as alcohol or drugs, it's very likely that our family does not feel safe, supportive, or nurturing in a reliable way as well. These softer, harder to measure, and easy to overlook aspects of earliest relations and support and nurturing connection are very important to our development. And a lot of us don't even know that. This is the type of information that Veronique has created here that actually should be at the forefront. If you're not taking the evidence-based scientific approach for your healthcare, guess what? You're going to be the fodder for the doctors. You're going to end up in the hospital with a chronic illness like me. And so it says ACEs are therefore an invisible, ACEs are actually therefore an invisible aspect of ACEs that don't quite get counted or recognized. They do, however, have the same effects on health. And these are the effects. The long-term effects of ACEs includes, and ACEs are all types of cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart and lung diseases, autoimmune diseases of all kinds, liver disease, skeletal fractures, and more. But I want to tell you something, and this is also something that you'll see in Bernice also when you go to her site and see her healing journeys, that this stuff is reversible, and how it's reversible is by changing your environment. But like I said, this is a class, you guys, and so all I hope that I do today is inspire you to take a look into this material, and if not, join us at the League of Extraordinary People if you have a pressing issue with PTSD, trauma, or addiction or adversity in your life, or just wanting to know more about ACEs and ACRs and adverse babyhood experiences, to consult us. And they talk about the absence of nurturing has a longer impact than the presence of ACEs, the lack of nurturing, and then anti-ACEs. They say that it's a game changer for others who have known deep down that something wasn't right, even if it all seemed normal when they were kids. Their difficulties maintaining healthy relationships, liking other humans, or trusting people had just not seemed normal. Their challenges in feeling worthy. Their bodies don't respond to treatments that seem to work for others. And when we go down and look at the anti-ACEs, counter-ACEs, increased resilience, they found that the kinds of experience that reduce risk for chronic conditions, painful beliefs, and difficult emotions. Did you hear this? They found that the kinds of experience that reduce the risk for chronic conditions, painful beliefs, and difficult emotions later in life can seem small. They can appear inconsequential, given their huge influence, and that little things turn out to make a big difference in buffering children from the effects of adversity. So the kind of things that create support and increase resilience in children, and not only in children, but also adults, is having good friends and neighbors. Beliefs that provide comfort. And so where you get the beliefs that provide comfort is probably doing some research, turn the TV off, pick up a book, there's plenty of books, liking school, teachers who care, and maybe it's not a teacher, just mentors who care, or friends who care, a caregiver who you feel safe with, opportunities to have fun, feeling comfortable with yourself, a predictable home routine like regular meals and bedtimes. We had to create neuroplasticity in our life, because guess what, you guys, being from the BIPOC community, it costs us $150 to probably $350 an hour to go see the type of therapist that might even be in the specialty field that can even talk to you about this. And if you do go see them, that most likely they won't be of color. I'm just trying to tell you, if you have an interest in your healthcare, you need to start today and take an interest in yourself by consulting Veronique Mead's work here and doing some work and looking into how does this impact your physical health, and also get to understand how trauma-informed care models can help you. They said what anti-ACEs also means is that support for parents can also help. So especially if parents have their own challenges and histories of trauma. So parents that are out there and you've got some challenges and histories of trauma, consult me. Finding ways to create predictable home routines, for example, can make a big difference. That's what's called the beginning of neuroplasticity to you guys. You got to get out your groove. So that's what's going on. So we created a program where we're in an error routine. We keep rotating back to the same program. I hope this makes sense to some people that's out there. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Any suggestions, Melissa?
Just a reminder, your camera that's on today is straight in front. So just make sure you're looking forward, okay? Just don't want anybody to think that Alfred is looking to the side because he's distracted or anything.
So next we're going to talk about the 30-year perspective study. Okay. I seen we had chat pop up. And so it talks about the 30-year perspective, the insecure attachment effects on physical health. Individuals who have insecure attachment at both 12 months, listen to me, you guys. Individuals who are insecurely attached at both 12 months and 18 months were 4 times more likely to report physical illness as well as inflammatory or related and non-specific illnesses at age 32 than those who are continuously secure earlier in life. A lot of people that we have don't really understand what we're talking about today. So I'm hoping that this inspires some people to look at it. It says that life experiences affect our physical health. It comes back to what I described in the earlier post, that this very niche word, epigenetics, and why chronic illnesses may be reversible. And this is a discovery that genes do not determine our health, you guys. It's the combination of our genes and life experiences. That's the reason why we have to change our life experiences if we want to change our health experiences, our healthcare outcomes. And so it says, goes on to say that adversity and safety influence gene function, and through the process of epigenetics, and these changes can be reversed. This is a hope that comes from understanding of trauma. So everybody out there who might have a chronic illness, this is the discovery that genes do not determine our health. It's the combination of our genes and life experiences that influence whether our genes are turned on or off, and that's epigenetics. That's the basic definition of epigenetics. Adversity and safety influence gene function. So how are you living in your houses? Are you safe? And that's the reason why we use a trauma-informed care model here. Adversity is the same as trauma, and safety means everything for us. And the multi-generational influences, parents tend to raise their children the way they were raised. This is seen in humans and other mammals. And when we're early maternal care influence epigenetics in the next generation. Let me explain something to you guys. A lot of us don't understand that we have a reptilian brain, we have a mammalian brain, and we have a prefrontal cortex. The reptilian brain is actually where the amygdala was centered at, and the amygdala is actually the one that's our smoke detector. Anytime something comes close up to us and uncomfortable, the amygdala is the one that makes decisions. Our memory didn't start to develop until the ages between 4 and 5, and that's called the hippocampus. And then our prefrontal cortex doesn't start to develop until around the age of 11 or 12, and is not fully developed until the age of 25. So a lot of us, that we keep thinking that we're thinking was something, but our thinking didn't really start to metabolize until the ages of 11 and 12. So everything else that we kind of known and picked up came through the imprint in our amygdala and our hippocampus. And so, and actually it's in the hippocampus because this doesn't start to around the age of 4 or 5. So when you start looking at yourself and you start trying to imagine how to heal yourself, when you look at Veronique's work here, and you look at this in a classroom type mindset and setting, it says parents tend to raise their children the way they were raised. This is seen in humans and other mammals, where early maternal care influences epigenetics in the next generation. If one generation grows up feeling unsafe or having little support, this is what they unconsciously role model and reenact with their offspring. Did you hear me say that? If one generation, so that generation of slavery that we experienced when we came over has still impacted our brains and bodies and minds today. It says that if one generation grows up feeling unsafe or having little support, this is what they're unconsciously role model and reenact with their offspring via epigenetics. A lot of us don't understand that some of our ancestors are still calling through our bodies. It said the effects of parenting are described as a form of social inheritance mediated by epigenetic processes. World War I and II and the Great Depression were a deeply stressful and often traumatic experience for an entire generation and whole culture. And these are examples of events that have had underappreciated consequences. Whether you're Black, brown, or indigenous, or immigrant, that might happen to be of the white body experience, guess what? During those times, 100 years ago, just right after the Spanish flu, which was happening in 1920, Spanish flu happened in 1918, experiences of loss can make it difficult for a parent to connect with their children. So that's the reason why we can't connect with a lot of our youth, because of the loss, but the loss comes because of the domestication and the dream of the planet, because there's so much oppression. You look at us, we live in Seattle. The livable wage in Seattle should be $35 an hour. And guess what? And then you look at your seniors who have to live in Seattle. So if you have to look at experience of the loss can make it difficult for a parent to connect to their children. Experience of loss can make it difficult for an adult to connect with themselves. And stress is a big suppression of maternal behavior. Learn more about how the interruption of bonding around the time of birth can decrease the ability of parents to feel love. But there's also some adults out there who lack that feeling of feeling love. and they are designed to feel their children and how this is something that happens outside of our control. The science of anti-ACEs provides hope for all parents who are healing their own trauma in order to raise their children in a healthier way and who are striving to actively help their children be more resilient. There's a lot of adults out here who actively are striving to be more resilient. Not only their children, they can hardly manage their children because of the stress that's going on. So as we continue on, our next topic tonight is the multi-generational influences. There we go. Go back to somatic experiencing. How much time we have left?
We have about 35 minutes.
Okay, good. So the League of Extraordinary People is about somatic experiencing, and what I want to do is share with you guys about somatic experiencing. Somatic experiencing is what I found out, and actually I found this out through Veronique. This is a school that she went to after being a medical doctor. She went to somatic experience. She became a somatic experiencing practitioner. And the reason for that is because the somatic experiencing method is a body-oriented approach to the healing of trauma and other stress disorders. It's the life work of Dr. Peter A. Levine, resulted from his multidisciplinary study of stress, physiology, psychology, etiology, biology, neuroscience, and indigenous healing practice and medical biophysics, together with over 45 years of successful clinical application. A lot of us who are up from the community of color, we're not going to be able to go and see a therapist of this nature because the BIPOC community, the majority of us barely got Obamacare. And so you can't, through Obamacare or Medicaid and Medicare, be able to even go see a individual who's actually working underneath this discipline, because you have to have a personal experience with somatic experiencing, or the needs for somatic experiencing. It says that somatic experiencing approach offers a framework to assess where a person is stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze response. So our autonomic nervous system, which is composed of our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is a fight, flight, and freeze, and our parasympathetic nervous system is a rest and digest. So it's actually our break. Let me say that again. It's actually the parasympathetic nervous system is actually our break, and how you use your break. And if we're going to just do something briefly right now, it's called deep diaphragmatic breathing. And so it says with the somatic experiencing approach offers a framework to assess where a person is stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze responses, and provides clinical tools to resolve these fixated physiological states. Did you hear me? Physiological states. It provides effective skills appropriate to a variety of healing professions, including mental health. And I like to call that health and wellness. I don't like the term mental health. I think this is caused by the environment, and it's caused by the domestication and the dream of the planet. And then medicine, I prefer Eastern medicine, physical and occupational therapies, body work, addiction, treatment, first response, education, and others. Next slide, please. The science. And the reason why I keep telling everybody this is a class, and you know, I'm not going to be doing a lot of Alfredisms and stuff, because I really want you to soak this up and take this to the community that you need to take it to in order to be able to help heal. They say trauma has become acute. Trauma has become as acute stress from a perceived life threat. Does that make sense? Huh? It's not about making sense. As the end product of accumulated stress, both types of stress can seriously impair a person's ability to function with resilience and ease. Trauma may result from a wide variety of stressors, such as accidents, invasive medical procedures, sexual or physical assault, emotional abuse, neglect, war, natural disasters, loss, birth trauma, or the corrosive stressors of ongoing fear and conflict. Like, can you imagine living in fight and flight, living in your sympathetic for 38 years? That's basically where I lived at, you guys. In fight, flight, and freeze, fight, flight, and freeze, fight, flight, and freeze. And the only time I got to the parasympathetic side is when I would pass out. Sometimes I would be up for 2 or 3 days. And so as I'm learning to heal now, I'm understanding the science of trauma. And so let me go over this again. It says trauma may begin as acute stress from a perceived life threat. Did you hear me? A perceived life threat. What perceived that life threat is your amygdala, not your prefrontal cortex, because your amygdala is your homeland security. Or as the end product of culminated stress. Culminated stress is when you just blow up. It's just, that had it, man. It's just too much, you know. Both types of stress can seriously impair a person's ability to function with resilience and ease. So if you can't function with resilience and ease, it's impacting your psychology. Trauma may result from a wide variety of stressors, such as accidents, invasive medical procedures, sexual or physical assault, emotional abuse, neglect, war, natural disasters, loss, birth trauma, or the corrosive stressors of ongoing fear and conflict. So remember that, write that down somewhere. And it talks about how SC works. SC's experiencing approach facilitates the completion of the self-protective, I want you to listen to this, facilitates the completion of the self-protective motor responses and the release of thwarted survival energy bound in the body, thus addressing the root cause of trauma systems. This is approached by gently guiding clients to develop increased tolerance for difficult body sensations and suppressed emotions. So if nobody's teaching you about your physiology, you know, when you're going to treatment and they're giving you that top-down approach where you're going to talk to your prefrontal cortex and you're going to try and get your prefrontal cortex to control your amygdala, then that's a bad move. That's a top-down approach. What SC does, it provides the infrastructure for the work to do the bottom-up approach. And so again, it says how it works. The somatic experience approach facilitates the completion of self-protective motor responses and release of thwarted survival energy bound in the body, thus addressing the root cause of trauma symptoms. So when this energy is bound in the body, it causes a cell danger response in our body. And this can be the onset of chronic illnesses. Next slide, please. So to learn more about that, I put this slide up and it talks about trauma and animal behavior. Animals are consistently under the threat of death, yet show no symptoms of trauma. From his years studying animal behavior, Dr. Peter Levine discovered that trauma has to do with the third survival response to perceived life threat, which is freeze. Did you hear that? Has to do with the third survival response to perceived life threat, which is freeze. When fight and flight are not options, we freeze and immobilize, like playing dead. This makes us less of a target. And so a lot of times that some of us don't understand freeze, but let's interchange that with the terminology called disassociation. This makes us less of a target. That's what we think on the inside. However, this reaction is time sensitive. In other words, it needs to run its course, and the mass energy that is prepared for fight or flight gets discharged through shaking and trembling. But if the immobility phase doesn't complete, which happens in the human body, then that charge stays trapped, and from the body's perspective, it's still under threat. The somatic expansion method works to release this stored energy and turn off this threat alarm that causes severe dysregulation and disassociation. So when you guys start feeling that you're getting anxiety or you're feeling depression, guess what, you guys? That's your physiology. It's telling you that your homeostasis is out of balance. And your homeostasis is your nervous system, and it's derived from your autonomic nervous system. That's with your homeland security, because it's your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, and your adrenaline gland. And these are the things that secrete hormones into our body that cause us to start having anxiety or depression in the first place. It's the hormones. So it's our physiology that causes anxiety and depression. But our thinking can impact it, especially when it gets hijacked by the amygdala. Next slide, please. SE helps people understand their body's response to trauma. And so helping the helpers, trauma is a fact of life, you guys. If it does not, however, however, happen to be a life sentence. The guiding principle of somatic experiences we bring to we exist to bring education and training to those who can help heal people with trauma. And that's what the League of Extraordinary People is about, to bring hope to those who are living with trauma and awareness of trauma, to relate professional communities and the general public. And that's the reason why I like that affirmation I started off today with about darkness. Somatic expansion, you guys, listen to me, because if you go to a regular treatment place, or you go to one of those treatment centers, they're not going to share this type of information with you, because listen to this. They say somatic expansion is a psychobiological method for healing trauma and other stress disorders. It is based on multidisciplinary intersection of physiology, psychology, biology, neuroscience, and medical biophysics, and has been clinically applied for more than 4 decades. Next slide, please. Now we're coming down to trauma-informed nutrition. One of the big factors in Veronique, I know she can vouch for this too, is nutrition. When you're healing from liver cancer, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or anything. But the first thing you need to understand is recognizing a relationship between your adversity, your chronic disease, and your nutritional health. And it talks about understanding trauma, physically, emotionally harmful, life-threatening event that can have lasting adverse effects on an individual's health and well-being, including the individual relationship with food and their risk of developing chronic disease. A lot of us don't even really understand this relationship about food, but I got a little booklet here that I brought with me because I have a problem with food, because my autoimmune system has been compromised and I have a leaky gut, which means that toxins are getting into my body, and the toxins that are coming into my body, they come from household dysfunction. They come from the environment that we live in. And one of the things that we eat daily, you guys, is food that is toxic. I want to share something with you. It says the riches of the earth's minerals. We need in proper quantities and proportions over 70 minerals for peak performance of every cell in our body. We need minerals in our bodies for the proper composition of the bodily fluids, for the formation of bone and for formation of blood and bone cells, and the maintenance of healthy nerve functionings. Lack of a single mineral in our food can cause mental and physical problems. Did you hear me? Lack of a single mineral in our food can cause mental and physical problems. We therefore need to become more aware of the nutritional value of each type of food and eat the correct ones. We all know of the importance of calcium in our diets for building strong bones and teeth, but how many know that we need magnesium for the same reason? Just as important, where are those minerals going to come from? Our soils are becoming more and more depleted of necessary minerals. Many fruits and vegetables now have less than 12 minerals out of the 70 plus that humans need for proper functioning, and which were present in our foods only 100 years ago. Most of us need some form of supplement to supply us with all the necessary minerals for the body's optimal performance. The truth is that our foods are very enormously in value, and some of them just aren't worth eating as food. Our physical well-being is more directly dependent upon the minerals we take into our system than upon calories or vitamins and other precise proportions of starch, protein, and carbohydrates. And the reason for that is that we need the minerals so that our blood can be able to communicate with our neurotransmitters. So understanding trauma and understanding the physically and emotional harmful life-threatening event that can have lasting adverse effects on the individual's health and well-being, including the individual's relationship with food. It's the same thing with your car. If you're not putting good gas in your car, you're not going to have a good outcome with your health care. And so it says that historical trauma results from multi-generational trauma experienced by a specific culture or race and ethnic groups. It's related to major oppressive events such as slavery, the Holocaust, forced migration, and the violence of colonization of indigenous people. A lot of us need to look at the science behind trauma. Systematic trauma refers to contextual features of environments and institutions that give rise to trauma. A lot of reasons why we have the homelessness in this pandemic outbreak is because of the environments and the institution that give rise to the trauma, maintain it, and impact post-traumatic responses. Adverse childhood experiences are potential traumatic events that can result in toxic stress. Prolonged exposure to ACEs can create a toxic stress response, meaning a toxic stress response means that we snap, which can damage the developing brain and the body of children, affect overall health, and cause long-term health problems. So as a child, if you grew up with adverse childhood experiences, most likely you had adverse babyhood experiences. So this abuse, whether physical, emotional, sexual, neglect, physical, including food and restriction, and emotional meaning the verbiage that they use on you, and the household dysfunction, the untreated mental illnesses in the home, the substance abuse or untreated mental illness in the community, domestic violence, incarceration, family separation, bullying, natural disasters and war, like this natural disaster and this war that we're actually in America right now, about and that's the war of the privileged and the non-privileged. Poverty, discrimination, infectious disease, outbreak, pandemic, and medical trauma, involvement in child welfare, exposures to ACEs. The impact of trauma is the exposure to ACEs can dramatically increase the risk of liver disease, severe obesity. So if you have a weight problem, that's ACEs, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So we look at all these things. We have to take in impact and how this has impacted our lives. So it says 6 in 10 people have experienced at least one ACE. A lot of us don't even really realize that actually in the ACE study, it was actually done right just north of the blue zone. The blue zone is Loma Linda, California. And they took this research, I think out of Claremont, but if you look at the demographics of the research, and it says 6 in 10 people have experienced at least one ACE, they actually took this study and got the most providers was from the white culture community. The community of color didn't have as much exposure in this research, because if they'd have known that they did this in the community of color, it wouldn't have been 6 in 10 people. It would have been 9 in 10 people would have been up in the, and it wouldn't be 1 in 6 people who've experienced 4 ACEs or more. I have an ACE score of 9. And they say some population are greater risk than others. Some of us need to take that ACE questionnaire that we have on our website at the League of Extraordinary People.org. Go there and take that. Take the resilient questionnaire also, so you can find out how much gas you have in your tank. They say women and several racial and ethnic minority groups are at a greater risk for having experienced 4 or more ACEs. And it says food insecure families have a greater risk of experiencing multiple ACEs or other forms of trauma. So as we move forward, it says, why trauma-informed nutrition, you guys? Well, the reason why trauma and adversity of any kind can disrupt our biology and then exacerbate an unhealthy relationship with food, leading to poor nutritional health. There's a lot of us are eating food that doesn't even have any protein in it, doesn't even have any life. There's no green in it. The relationship between food, individuals, families, and communities must be treated with compassion and a holistic perspective that acknowledges individual, historical, and systemic trauma. For adverse food-related experiences, you guys, unreliable and unpredictable meals. Remember that when you was a child. Restriction and control over food, body shaming if you ate too much, loss of food traditions if you didn't have enough money, manipulation, punishment, or rewarding with food, shame, bias, or stigma associated when utilizing food assistance, that's food stamps. And look at the majority of seniors who have to use untrustworthy or inadequate nutritional supports. And that's the reason why you see so many Whole Foods, TCC, in neighborhoods and residential areas of influence. You can tell because the food's different, the quality of the food is different. But a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the food products that we're getting right now have pesticides on them. These pesticides is compromising our physiology. We believe so much into the curriculum, and when I say curriculum, and that's the program of the white body supremacy culture, that we're not even questioning things that's killing our bodies. The adverse childhood experiences research actually came out of a study for obesity. And they talk about the dietary behaviors that may result from adversity. You see people hoarding food, binge eating, compulsive overeating. The food is high in fat, sugar, or salt diets, reliance on convenience food, eating disorders, or food addiction. Decision making to meet short-term rather than long-term needs. Nobody's even talked to them about it. They didn't get that in parenting. Deprioritization of planning and budgeting. That should have been the first thing. And so what is trauma-informed nutrition? Trauma-informed nutrition acknowledges the role of ACEs and other forms of adversity play in a person's life, recognizes symptoms of trauma and promotes resilience. A trauma-informed approach is characterized by understanding that unhealthy dietary habits, chronic disease, and poor health outcomes may be a result of adverse experiences and not individual choices, and therefore aims to avoid shaming, stigma, and blame. Trauma-informed nutrition supports an integrated approach to nutritional health that highlights 6 components of care. And these things are nurturing and caregiving, balanced nutrition, mindfulness, physical activities, quality sleep, support relationships, and concrete support. So if you want to overcome trauma in your life, you guys, and want to create neuroplasticity, these are 6 of the common components of care. And how to apply this approach to nutritional programs? Well, so if you have a registered dietitian, they can acknowledge, start, and not only dietitians can, but you can, let me explain this, acknowledge the historical and systemic trauma, focus on holistic well-being rather than obesity and BMI, refrain from overemphasizing personal behavior change, recognize some nutritional interventions may be triggering what they may be triggering, identify the willingness or ability of clients to adopt new behaviors, acknowledge the strength and skills of the clients. And that's something huge that doctors should not also do. And that's to acknowledge the strengths and skills of the clients. If your doctor is not looking at you and doing a resilience exam and so they can acknowledge your strength and skills, then you're probably in the wrong room. Because if you don't recognize, because how are you going to build safety and how are you going to be a trust if he doesn't acknowledge the strength and skills of who you are? And you need to ask questions. And you need to ask your diet if he's trauma-informed, your doctor if he's trauma-informed. Inspire healing in a healing relationship with food. Are they inspiring a healing in a healthy relationship with food? Are they reducing shame, anxiety, and confusion? Are they educating you or are you just a product? And your tension, are they talking about your relaxation? Are they talking about practice and culture, humility about their practice? And how that they don't know much about your culture and how can they get educated so they can better help and serve you? And what are your food difficulties? Address conscious and unconscious bias. On a trauma-informed program, clients experience safety and security issues, so the environments that consistently support stress, de-escalate healthy choices, and wellness practice. These are the things that you need to have not only in a trauma-informed nutrition program, but in a trauma-informed program. These are the 6 guiding principles. Trustworthiness and transparency. Staff that are well-trained to deliver trauma-informed services, meaning that they know about your darkness because they experience your darkness. Cultural, historical, and gender issues. Cultural responsive interactions and experiences. So if they're not dealing with you according to your culture, then that might not be a safe and healthy place because they're not listening to you. Because that brings consciousness to personal systemic biases around different community experiences with food. So if you don't educate them, how are they going to know? Offer content and resources that acknowledge the multiple dimensions of nourishment in people's lives. Empowerment, voice and choice, collaboration, mutuality, peer support, recognition of themselves and their community as wise and resourceful. You can't do anything for somebody else if you can't look at yourself in the mirror. So you support clients, you help each other, teach each other, and share relevant skills and resources. As we're getting ready to come to a close, Melissa, do we have any minutes left?
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left still. And I just want to remind folks that all of the information and resources that Alfred has referenced today, those will go out in the slide deck that we'll be sending. So there will be links that can take you to, for example, this infographic. And Alfred, can you speak a little bit to how folks can use either Veronique's documents that you've used for your advocating for your care, and then also how they could use this infographic in advocating for their care as well within the systems and their doctors that they're working with?
So when you go to Veronique Mead's website, and did you put Veronique's link in the chat box?
I can do that before we finish.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you could, because what I did was I accessed her fact sheets, and what you can do is you can download the fact sheets, and you can take those fact sheets in with you when you go see your doctor, and you can tell them about this research and this impact. And wow, Linda's on here. Wow. You're making me blush, Linda. But there's some very good educators on this Zoom session that we're having this morning, you guys. And so, you know, I have a problem with my memory. So refresh me with that question again, Melissa, what you wanted me to say about the fact sheet, right? The fact sheet. So what I did was everywhere I went, when I went to the University of Washington, when I went to Cancer Care Alliance, when I went to all my doctors, I took the Adverse Babyhood Experiences fact sheets and Adverse Childhood Experience fact sheets by Veronique Mead, you know, and I took them into my doctor, and I take the information in, like the 5 facts of the misunderstandings. I also take information like that to educate my doctors. It depends on if I like them, but if you don't show the impact of ACEs to your doctors, they'll never start even correlating it, because they're not even studying ACEs in their schools. They're not studying the impact of it on your body. And by you being Black, first of all, they're going to question you to the impact of what you're saying, because they hold themselves in high regard and high esteem because they went to medical school. You know, and I've had arguments with doctors all the time who think they know more than me, but guess what? We are subject matter experts. And so if you don't know anything about your anatomy, then you're allowing somebody else to control your life. And so that's what I did. Veronique Mead allowed me to take the power back from the doctors and actually to be able to empower the doctor so I can get the kind of help that I got. And so I want to share with you guys that on the 5th, I got my last CAT scan, and my doctor told me that I was cancer-free, and that in actuality, I didn't have to come back for another CAT scan for 6 months. So when you start doing CAT scans every 90 days, you know what I mean, and you wake up and you realize that 70% of your immune system is in your stomach, and you wake up with that nausea, you know, and you have to change your life. You know, it's really, really, really important that you have a relationship with a power greater than yourselves. And my power right at that particular moment happened to be Veronica Mead's information. And I use that to save my life, you guys. So that's the reason why I'm highlighting her material. I'm highlighting the Center for Harvard for the Developing Children, because in actuality, we are the outcome of the science of neglect. And so because the system has neglected our community, the BIPOC community as a whole, and lacked to respect us and empower us with the dialogue that we need to have, just straight old information, man. Listen, we don't need the education that they've been promoting in schools, because they won't even allow BIPOC history in there, because we know for a fact that I did a presentation on the 13th, and it talked about that while back in the Rome days that we existed, we had communities and libraries in the pyramids when Rome was still having gladiators. And so they don't ever want us to connect with our history. We don't even know how powerful the color of our Black skin is. That's another reason why we're healthy. You have to take a look at us, our BIPOC communities, through the lens of science, not through the lens of a curriculum that was invented to keep us systemically oppressed. Because if you look at the definition of racism, the culture of racism, and I had it around here somewhere. Melissa told me to don't do it because I can get too much information in here. But the simple fact is that we were kings and queens before the foundation of the Roman Empire. And so if we don't bring this type of information into the setting place where we heal our people, we're not going to move far. Is that good enough for you, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that captured a fantastic amount of information. And so I did drop Veronique Mead's website link in the chat. And then this infographic that Alfred referenced here about trauma-informed nutrition, that link will also be in the slides that go out so that you can access and download any of these documents that Alfred has been referencing and then use them to self-advocate, you know, in the care that you're receiving as well. And so as we...
Melissa,
What was that?
The author of the article that we use, the 5 Facts About Health that are often misunderstood, Linda, she's in our group too today. That was awesome.
Oh, very cool. I love to hear that. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as we come to a close, if folks have any questions that you'd like, you can unmute and feel free to ask those or drop them in the chat. And I'm going to move through our last couple of closing slides here. So if you did find any of the information today valuable or relevant, and you do have the ability to make any kind of donation, you can do that through our PayPal link. And so that is here. And then that's just paypal.me/TLOEP1. And I will put that in the chat as well. I apologize, my dog is getting antsy over here. And then here we have a feedback survey for y'all. And if you hold up your phone, this is a QR code. If you hold up your phone camera, and you don't have to actually take a picture, your phone camera will just scan it and take you right to the feedback survey so that you can give us your input on how we can continue to improve these presentations and make them relevant and valuable for you moving forward. And then I will also be dropping that link to the survey in the chat as well, just in case you might not have your phone next to you, or you might not have that app ability on your phone. And so that'll go in the chat as well. I'll leave this up for just one more second while I drop that link into the chat. And that way folks can scan it.
Any questions?
Let's take a look here. We do have a question. It sounds like your spiritual faith has been a huge help for you on top of all the science of adversity. Are there any other tools you found particularly helpful?
Oh, wow. It was just prayer, meditation, research. My curiosity for the unknown, you know, is that innate ability. We are more than what man has told us we are, because they want to control us. And so even though I've been beaten and I've been down, you know, I'm resilient. You know, like I said, you know, I swallowed a quarter ounce of crack cocaine and died and was paralyzed. So I just kept my faith, my spirituality in good orderly direction, and work on staying humble, teachable, and reachable. Anybody else? Anybody? You can release your mics and ask questions if you have some questions. You know, like I said, I spent 38 years out on the streets, and I created the most successful continuum of care program in the 75-year history of Shake-Shadow Hospital in Seattle. And I've been on the front page of newspapers, and I'm the same guy that used to smoke crack and shoot heroin sometimes simultaneously. I've been through all the institutions. I used to call them honeycomb hideouts. They actually call them jails and institutions that promote death. But I survived all of that, and that's the things that actually are the catalyst for me today to keep fighting in my journey, is to educate and empower all those who are living in darkness that there is light inside the darkness. No questions, Melissa?
Nothing's coming in so far. I did just want to let folks know the QR code that's on the screen now. If you scan that, that will take you to our link tree that has all of our social media links. We are the handle at TLOEP1. And so you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, all across social media. And those links will be compiled as well as to our website under that QR code.
So somebody asked if I had a lot of support, you know what I mean? That was like, you know, come on, when you're coming out of adversity and you got a history like I have, you know, you don't get a lot of support. But did they utilize me to support a lot of their institutions? Of course, you know, because I was the last kid on the block. I died and was paralyzed. So the newspapers used me. The local nonprofits used me. They had fundraisers using my image and stuff. But when it comes time to doing this work that we're doing right now, we have the support of God, Veronique, me, Linda, Melissa, and my brothers and sisters out there in the community like you guys who want to help us move forward to create residential healing centers and stop sending our people to treatment. We need healing centers today. Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We will get the recording out and the slides sent out to everyone who was registered. So if you're here, you were registered, and we'll make sure that's to you by Friday at the very latest. I will be trying to get it out to you, though, today so that you can have access to all of that information as soon as possible.
And remember, this was a class. This wasn't a presentation where, you hear about all the Alfredisms and all that stuff. I wanted to keep it formatted because I want you to take this home with you so they can be the lesson that keeps giving. Okay? Take this home to your families. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bernie. Bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.